Well, hello, and welcome to the final part 5 of Brian Needleman Supports Equality and Respect for LGBT folks everywhere. So, this is the beginning of part 5. We're on paragraph 2, and let's finish this up. Sorry for video 4 is going to be dark because what was happening was the sun went down and I was on a roll and really into what I was doing, and I just didn't want to stop. So the 4th video is going to be a little bit dark, but you can still hear my voice, you can still feel my passion and my intensity. But I decided to close it up. I want you to see me. The cool thing about this right now, as just sort of stepping out for a second, there's one light in this office that works, and I just had this very, very warm feeling, like it was back at the first temple way back, and there was just a little bit of ember left, to keep the first temple lit for maybe a couple hours, and it wound up lasting 8 days, hence you have the miracle of Hanukkah. Not quite as dramatic here, but some crazy reason, all the other lights in this office suite are dead, except for this one light. How do you like that? So with the blessing of this one light, yeah, I'm an atheist, but sometimes I can use the word blessing occasionally. Let's finish this up. Let's go for it. Okay. My work and life experiences have also taught me that I took for granted what it means to be a heterosexual man in today's world who is free to marry and be affectionate with a woman in public. Many times I've walked with a woman in public, sometimes holding hands and showing appropriate public displays of affection towards one another, or even showing not so appropriate public displays of affection, depending on how liquored up me and the lady at the time were, in ways heterosexual couples might do. In the eyes of most, nothing appeared remarkable about a man and a woman holding hands or snogging in public. Snogging is a term that was taken from one of my favorite series of novels, Harry Potter. Snogging meaning kissing. It hit me like a ton of bricks several years ago that I can freely be with a woman in public and nobody thinks twice simply because it's normal in their experience. But the harsh reality is that unless there are certain gay and those who identify as transgender-friendly clubs or places, it is often not safe for these folks to be open and authentic for fear of being the victim of a hate crime in terms of being violated in some capacity, such as, but again, not limited to some verbal ridicule, property damage, or being physically harmed. I am not a religious man, and consider myself culturally Jewish, more of a pragmatist, practical realist, rather than religious. But I have become more intrigued from reading up on the Kabbalah. A very special friend of mine gave me a book for my 50th birthday on the Kabbalah that I'm enjoying very much. This gift was not only wonderful and thoughtful, but synchronistic in ways that would take another War and Peace-sized novel to explain. Over the years, I have wrestled with whether or not I believe in God or not, and was content for a number of years, really, just to define myself as agnostic. But now I no longer believe in God and accept myself as a culturally Jewish man who is atheist and curious about the Kabbalah and other teachings out there. To be perfectly frank, the constant deplorable actions and behaviors of President Trump and his band of not-so-merry men and women, constantly tossing rose petals at his feet and blowing cowardly accolades up his ass, have tipped the scale from me being agnostic to atheist. And no, I am not angry with God or anyone who believes in him. God and myself parted on amicable terms. As far as I'm concerned, he still loves me and considers me as one of his children that he loves no more or less than his other children. Even though I don't believe in him anymore, and as far as I'm concerned, he welcomes me to believe in him again, if and when it works for me. I do believe that if there is a God or supreme being up there, that he is benevolent and accepting of all his children, just the way they are. That's my belief, folks, and I'm sticking to it. Feel free to agree or disagree with me on the spectrum. I wholeheartedly support the First Amendment of the Constitution. And not just because it grants folks in America the right to have freedom of religion, but because it truly makes my heart sing to see folks happy. And if getting comfort and strength from their faith and belief in God and their religion makes someone joyful, warms their heart, and puts a smile on their face, I totally support what works for them. As long as folks aren't proselytizing me, or damning me to hell because I don't believe in God and or accept Jesus Christ as my Savior, I'm good. As long as folks aren't continuing to fan the flames of anti-Semitism by spewing that Jews are responsible for killing Christ, Jesus Christ, or offering me their version of a religiously correct opinion that all folks are responsible for killing Jesus Christ, I'm good. It is this atheist and culturally Jewish man's belief that if one believes they are responsible for the death of Jesus Christ, knock yourself out. But don't weave us Jews or any other non-agreeing folks into your unilateral perspective without our consent. If one believes that a supreme being created everything, then the First Amendment of the Constitution granting all of us Americans the right to freely choose our religious perversions must be a part of God's plans as well. I don't know if God used the word perversions. That's a bit of an embellishment. Everything else we'll leave in there. As long as folks aren't using their religious beliefs as a justification for being racist, bigots, spreading anti-Semitism, and committing hate crimes, I'm good. And if you're listening, Steve Harvey, no human being is an idiot because they choose to be an atheist or a believer in God. No human being is superior or inferior to another human being because they believe or don't believe in a supreme being. No human being is a better or worse human being because they believe or don't believe in a supreme being. What is idiotic, Mr. Harvey, is you're using your celebrity status to preach your ungodly opinion that human beings are inferior idiots if they don't believe in God. Sounds like you're spewing racism out of your mouth, Mr. Harvey, which, in my not-so-humble opinion, is a very ungodly and idiotic thing to do. Why don't you take a page or two out of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s playbook and use your celebrity status to preach something godly like human beings treating one another as equals, demonstrating acceptance and tolerance for one another's right to choose to believe in God or be an atheist. I'm done with you. Go back to Family Feud. Piss off. Moron. Okay. A bit ago, I went to an Episcopalian service that I was invited to by the minister for helping them organize their donation drive. So don't worry, my Jewish friends and comrades. I'm still deeply and forever rooted in my Jewish heritage and have no desire to switch teams and convert. The incentive of a delicious free lunch following the service might have been my original impetus for going to the Episcopalian service that Sunday, but I received much more than a yummy free meal that Sunday afternoon. The minister was a heterosexual man, married with 2 children. He spoke about how all human beings are God's children, and in the eyes of God are equal and perfect, just as we are, because God had created all of his children in his image. This was around the time when Proposition 8, which was banning gay marriage in California, was to be voted on by Californians. To my surprise, the minister used his sermon as a springboard to talk about tolerance, accepting of differences, and human rights, and taking a stand against racism, bigotry, and hatred. And he was encouraging people to vote against the passage of Proposition 8. Didn't see that one, Harry. Didn't see that one coming, but it was a pleasant surprise. Unfortunately, Proposition 8 did pass, but a higher court in California had subsequently ruled the proposition unconstitutional. Proposition 8 was appealed all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and on June 26, 2013, Chief Justice John Roberts ruled in an astonishing 5-4 tie-breaking vote, sent Proposition 8 down the shitter in care of the tidy-bo man. And LGBT folks in California were permitted the legal right to marry. Wow. Wow. It's too bad Mensch never got to experience that. He would have really relished that opportunity. Yeah. Sorry he wasn't alive around that time. The exuberance from this David versus Goliath triumph had reverberated throughout the country and the world. Energetically, Proposition 8, getting flushed down the shit pipes, was a victory for anyone in this world who ever felt oppressed and given the message in life that they are inferior to others and undeserving of their basic human right to live their lives openly and safely with honesty and with integrity. On the aforementioned day, a little justice was served and righteousness was honored. Unexpectedly, the minister got me to question the illogicalness of why would a benevolent supreme being that created all folks as perfect, because created in his image, ever state that he would raise hell and high water to prevent LGBT folks from being able to be afforded the same rights and privileges of marriage that straight folks get. Now, in my hardly humble opinion, again, the same illogical and dangerous thinking can be applied in extremes when folks say they got God's stamp of approval to kill and harm others for fundamental differences in ideals. Such lost souls then act out what I opine as very distorted and erroneous beliefs and proceed to blow up abortion clinics and large office buildings to convey God's message. The argument of God granting us free will to do our own thing and his staying out of the mix on the sidelines, it could make sense if I wholeheartedly believed in a supreme being, but it doesn't since I'm an atheist. It just doesn't sit well with me when folks turn God into the poster boy for racism and bigotry. I feel these types of mentalities are a breeding ground for hatred that many times have manifested into violent hate crimes against gays and those who identify as transgender. A few years back in Davis, California, a young man was nearly beaten to death for simply appearing gay. There are too many of these stories. Too many. Any story that involves gays and those who identify as transgender being beaten or killed is tragic. Any story where gays and those who identify as transgender being repeatedly shamed for being who they are, discriminated against, or denied the legal right to marry and receive the same benefits as heterosexual couples is tragic. I may be an atheist, but I refuse to believe that any benevolent... I may be an atheist, but I refuse to believe that any benevolent God that so many deem as omnipotent and loving would condone using his name and being made a poster boy for racism, hatred, bigotry, and violence towards anyone. I refuse to believe that any benevolent God would ever condemn any of his children as being less than and not equal to his others. Because if he did, this is condoning racism. I refuse to believe that a benevolent God would ever show intolerance and not accept any of his children because they were gay and are identified as being transgender. And I refuse to accept that any benevolent God would ever condemn equality and the legal right to marry the one they love, regardless of sexual orientation and or gender identification. And I refuse to accept that any benevolent God would ever tolerate or condone any hate crimes and acts of violence toward gays and those who identify as transgender, because if he did, this is condoning bigotry. Remember, Mr. President, with great power comes great responsibility. This line got a lot of play from Spider-Man / Peter Parker's uncle, but variations were used long before this blockbuster hit by Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, and so many other biblical references before them. Mr. President, when people feel dishonored, dehumanized, less than or not equal, or not accepted by others because of their non-threatening differences, people feel hated and or invisible. They exist in the world without any spark to ignite a flame and feel disempowered. They feel worthless, apathetic, and have no desire or expectation to become anything better. They exist with a cold spot in their chests where their hearts ought to be, and they remain closed to others. People then live their lives in despair. Sometimes they drink, drug, and do other things to numb out their pain. Sometimes they get profoundly depressed and die by suicide. It is my fear, Mr. President, that what is being modeled to Americans under your leadership is that racism is the new equality, bigotry is the new acceptance and tolerance, and hate and violence is the new love and whispering sweet nothings into their lovers' ears. And this frightens me to no end, Mr. President. My 50 years of human experiences, Mr. President, has taught me that when people feel honored, respected, safe, and tolerated for their non-threatening differences, they feel loved. And when people feel loved in this world, regardless of whether they are gay or straight, regardless of their political or religious perversions, regardless of the gender they identify, regardless of their ethnicity and the color of their skins, they feel a flame burning inside them that empowers one to be the best person they can be. When people feel loved in this world, Mr. President, their hearts remain open. And they use that flame burning inside them to empower others to be the best person that they can be. That, Mr. President, is a rich example of what makes people great, and therefore contributes to make America and the world great. I'm going to leave you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and everybody else out there with another quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King stated, "The time is always right to do what is right." Once again, the time is always right to do what is right. So, how about you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and everybody else out there? Do the best you can to keep your minds and your hearts open to one another. It's never late to expand your perceptions of folks who present as different. Take a leap of faith. Venture a step into their shoes and let yourself wonder how someone else might see and experience the world differently than you. And then consider for a moment, if only a brief moment, that this human being is also a human being just like you, who is no better or worse than you because of their differences. In closing, I'm grateful to have my psychotherapy practice to privately honor, serve, and advocate for LGBT folks. I am also appreciative for social media venues to publicly honor my lifelong promise to Mensch of continuing to advocate for the rights, respect, and safety of gays and those who identify as transgender throughout America and maybe other places in the world as well. Despite the tragedy of Mensch dying by suicide, the promise he requested of me has been a gift and a genuine pleasure to honor and serve. I want to thank Mensch and other LGBT folks out there for teaching me to look at my many human flaws and work towards developing a greater sensitivity towards the plights of others. Thank you for teaching me how to step into other folks' shoes and to see things through their eyes. Thank you for teaching me to expand my perceptions to see people that are different or have differences from me as human beings that are not threatening and only want to be respected, seen, heard, validated as equals, and loved for who they are and for being themselves. And this squid is about out of gas and out of ink. I appreciate your tolerating this long video, or videos, 5 videos. And if you've gotten this far, I appreciate your time and your consideration. I know that not everything that I've said here people are going to like. I expect that I will lose many friends on my Facebook list that have ventured into reading this. I can't control the actions of other people, what they do. But I can't keep quiet anymore. Because keeping quiet for me is enabling racism and bigotry. And I'm not going to enable that shit. I would rather speak my mind, speak my truth, honor my integrity and my self-respect, lose a few people along the way, but know that I did the right thing. Lastly, I just want to say a small piece to Mensch. I hope that I honored you in the way that you deserve to be honored. I hope that this video and what I conveyed reaches someone, does some good in the world, and helps at least LGBT people know that there are people out there that give a shit. Not just people in your community, but some of us straight folks as well. And I hope, Mensch, that I've honored you properly in the way that you deserve. Thank you for being you. And thank you for a lot of years of working together. I hold no grudges or resentments that you took your own life. You made the choice to die, and I respect that. It took me a few years to get to that place. A little therapy, but I did get there eventually. Wherever you are, I know that you're in the best place that Mensches go. It's been an honor, and it's been a privilege. Good night. Be good to yourselves, folks, and be good to other people. Good night. Bye-bye.